Here come 9 questions that the religious shouldn't ask an atheist. In fact, they're questions the religious should know better than to ask an atheist. But here they go, with my own thoughts on why every single one of them is so mind-numbingly idiotic. The fact that any of them ever get asked at all shows why religion is so harmful to humanity. It just makes people dumb. So, here we go. I think that there are questions out there that are really just pointless to ask to an atheist. Not because they can't be answered, but because anyone with half a clue ought to already know the answer. The fact that these questions wind up being asked by the religious again and again and again just shows what kind of intellectual and rational problems theists actually have. So I came across this list on an article linked in the description, but I wanted to throw my own thoughts on why these 9 really stupid questions are really stupid. The religious ought to be able to work these things out on their own. The fact that they can't says something very bad about the religious. So, let's go look. Number 1. How can you be moral without believing in God? This is what happens when you really don't know what morality is. And that's not much of a surprise, because the religious believe, by and large, that morality is whatever their imaginary friend in the sky says it is. But if you think about it, that's actually kind of a scary thought. Is it moral because it's moral, or is it moral because God says it's moral? Given some of the decisions that God has made in the Bible, such as murdering just about everybody on the planet in a flood for not sufficiently kissing his ass, God's moral pronouncements are suspect at best. Throughout the Old Testament, God is a moral monster, and he really doesn't get that much better in the New Testament. The whole idea of substitutionary atonement is absurd. But anyhow, the reality is that we all get all of our morals from the same thing, and it has absolutely nothing to do with any gods. All humans, at our core, operate on what is called enlightened self-interest. We want to be treated, in general, in a particular way. Therefore, we treat others that way in hopes that they will reciprocate. From there, these ideas are codified into laws and adopted throughout a particular society. If God was really to blame, everyone on the planet would have the same moral views. But that's not the case. Outside of a few very basic ones, they don't. I mean, have you looked at the world lately? But this is what happens when you view everything through God-colored glasses. It makes you dumb. Number 2. How do you have any meaning in your life? Sometimes asked as, don't you feel sad or hopeless? Or even, if you don't believe in God or heaven, why don't you just kill yourself? That's the dumbest question you could ask. And that's saying something. If you don't believe in God or heaven, if you believe that this life is all there is and that once you die you're gone, why don't you kill yourself? Well, maybe because you don't want to die. Duh! In fact, the reverse is true. If you believe that paradise is waiting for you and that you're saved, why don't you kill yourself? And in fact, if you study history, that was a huge problem in the early church. People were offering themselves to go be with Jesus, and the church had to make up arbitrary rules about suicide to stop it. They were losing money after all. If everyone was dying, they couldn't give their money to the church. It's amazing how much the religious don't know about the things they profess faith in. But honestly, what gives my life meaning? Me. I do. I decide what I want to do with the only life that I demonstrably have, and so do you. You choose to believe in an imaginary friend. You choose to follow the teachings of a book of mythology. It's all a choice, but the religious are lazy. They don't want to have to take the responsibility for their actions, so they pretend that it's all been ordered from on high. They don't want to have to think about what's best for the world, so they insist that morality is out of their hands. Seriously, what's wrong with these people? Number 3. Doesn't it take just as much or even more faith to be an atheist as it does to be a believer? No, it doesn't. It takes no faith at all to be an atheist, because atheism is simply rejecting the claims of the religious for lack of corroboratory evidence. But this is yet another lie that the religious tell because they can't handle the truth. Atheists, by and large, don't say that gods don't exist. They just don't believe that they do. They have no burden of proof whatsoever. We're not the ones making any claims. We're just rejecting the ideas of the people who are making claims, and unsubstantiated claims at that, because those claims do not stand up to the damning light of reason. And this pisses the religious off to no end. They want to shift the burden of proof to atheists because they know they've got nothing when it comes to their silly beliefs. It's all blind faith, and they have no facts whatsoever. It's why so many of them demand that atheists prove them wrong. We don't have to. They have to prove themselves right, and they can't do it. It's where the whole "don't you have to have faith" nonsense comes from. They're projecting. Number 4. Isn't atheism just a religion? No, not by any definition of the word that I can find. The definition of religion is the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. That doesn't describe atheism at all. In fact, it's the polar opposite. Another definition is a particular system of faith and worship. We have no faith, and we don't worship anything. Still another is a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. And even there, we don't qualify because, for most of us at least, the ones that I see, we only talk about religion because religion won't leave us alone. If and when religion thankfully vanishes from the face of the planet, atheism will effectively cease to exist, at least as any kind of ongoing concern. We won't talk about it because it won't be there. It's like aleprechanism. If nobody believes in leprechauns, if nobody tries to force faith in leprechauns into our lives, then who would bother to identify that way? It makes no sense at all. Number 5. What's the point of atheist groups? How can you have a community and a movement for something you don't believe in? Now, I will be honest, that's something I ask myself all the time. It's why I'm not a member of any atheist group. I have no interest in any organized atheist communities. It's just not how I'm wired. That said, there are groups out there that do have a reason to exist, not because they're atheist, but because they're just keeping an eye on the stupid crap the religious do. Things like the Freedom from Religion Foundation and other similar groups, they do serve a useful function. Religious overreach is a serious problem, and it needs to be opposed because it harms us all. But even there, I'm not a member. I'm not a card-carrying, dues-paying member of anything. I simply have no interest. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't join various groups to have some form of community. They can, and that's fine. I personally don't think that slapping the atheist label on something makes it worthwhile, but you do you, I guess. Number 6. Why do you hate God, or aren't you just angry at God? Now this is, by far, the stupidest question that we get asked, and it makes no sense of any kind. It just proves that whoever is asking has no functional brain cells at all. We can't hate God by definition because we don't believe in God. We can't be angry at something that we don't think is real. Are you mad at unicorns? No? Why not? It's just dumb. And I know the argument that a lot of Christians make because it says in their silly book of mythology that everybody knows God is real. Well, your book is wrong. If it said in the Vedas that everybody knew Krishna was real, would Christians believe it? Of course not. I mean, seriously. Think, McFly. Think. Number 7. But have you read the Bible or some other holy book? Have you heard about some supposed miracles? Heard about my story about my personal religious experiences, etc.? All right. Here's the facts. Atheists, by and large, know the Bible better than the religious do. Every time someone does a study, it's the atheists and the Jews who know more about everyone else's religion than the religious adherents do. There's a reason that we're atheists. We know your religion. If more Christians would read the Bible critically, they wouldn't be Christians anymore. It isn't that we don't know enough about your religion. It's that we know too much. We have applied critical thinking skills to your theology, and we have found your theology to be absurd. And all of this relies on having blind faith that the things in your beliefs are true, which, if you had the capacity to step back and simply think rationally for a moment, you'd see that your assumptions are unfounded. There's no reason to think your beliefs are true, and every reason under the sun to think that they aren't. Your feelings don't matter. Figure it out. Number 8. What if you're wrong? Sometimes asked as, doesn't it make logical sense to believe in God? If you believe in you're wrong, nothing terrible happens. But if you don't believe in you're wrong, you could go to hell. Ah yes, Pascal's wager. Because even in Blaise Pascal's time, people pointed out how dumb this idea actually is. It makes the unfounded assumption that it's only the Christian God or no God at all that's possible. Newsflash for you, Bueller. There are literally millions of gods that man has invented for himself to bow down to, not to mention a near infinite amount that could be out there that we just haven't dreamed up yet. So which one of those is the real one, if any of them are? The odds of picking the right one at random are vanishingly small, especially since absolutely none of them have left any evidence of any kind for their own existence. So the only option that makes any kind of sense is to reject them all until evidence for one of them appears. And we're still waiting. Theists, get to work. Number 9. Why are you atheists so angry? Finally, we come to this chestnut. Why are we angry? Seriously? The Catholic Church has spent centuries covering up priestly sex abuse against children, and you ask us why we're angry. Muslims are still throwing gay people off of roofs, and you ask us why we're angry. Christians are trying to pass laws to restrict the rights of people around the world based on their irrational beliefs, and you ask us why we're angry. Thousands and thousands of years of human history stained by violence and bloodshed caused by people acting in the name of their gods. Christian violence, Muslim violence, Buddhist violence, Hindu violence, all done in the name of these made-up moral monsters. And you can't figure out why we're angry. Fuck you! I mean, these questions come up every single day, and they're all just dumb. What the hell is wrong with these religious imbeciles that they can't figure out just how stupid these questions actually are? It just isn't that hard. The fact that they ask these questions at all shows what a mind-numbing influence this religious mind poison has on people. And it's not just the ignorant idiots who live life on their knees that do it. It's the apologists. It's the people who ought to know better, who pull the same thing because either they aren't any smarter than the rank and file, or they just don't care. And if they don't care, that's even worse. We have every right to be angry, and the religious ought to be angry too. The religious are giving their time and money to these organizations, and they're being lied to in return. While the clergy are living a life of luxury in these gold-encrusted palaces, the religious in a lot of places are barely scraping by. They are being kept ignorant by the very people that they trust to tell them the facts. And they don't know enough to see that they've been had. Maybe instead of worrying what atheists are doing, maybe they need to figure out what they're doing wrong. Because they're doing a lot wrong. They're the ones with the problems, not us. We keep trying to tell them how wrong they are, and they don't want to listen. I don't know how to express how pathetically sad this actually is.
Bum